Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey Season 7, folks. In the next two episodes, we preview the 2021 and 2022 season with reporters from the top teams of every division in the NHL. These episodes will all come out within this week of the NHL season. Yes, the first week of the season is here. We even have all your divisional ranking final predictions and breakout for every single NHL team. We begin today with the Western Conference. Hit the music. Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey. I'm your host, Peter Bojaranov, and the mic is always on. It's your one-stop weekly shop for expert analysis on every single team. We are a fun hockey community, bring everyone together. You can find me on Twitter now at pbojaranov, Bojarinov. V as in Victor, formerly at Russia98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. That's Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag at Jablam Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on those three dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with three hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website, www.jablamsports.com, for our podcasts and even game notes for each episode. You'll get all the links to everything we mentioned on this show, including guests. We've even got articles this year and much more content weekly. For our podcasts, click on podcasts on our website and then hockey on this show specifically, right on our website. It's the first panel of the new season. It's time to start with the Central Division. Joining me to break down the division, preview their teams, and maybe possibly tell you how the divisions could end up. And you can find more about the breakdown of all the guests and some more guests from last year, the rankings of their beliefs for this division, how it's going to end up. JablamSports.com, Season 7. We are on Season 7, that's right. Joining to discuss back friends are Jessi Pierce. She's on the Bardown Beauties podcast. And, of course, we've seen her work on Minnesota Hockey Journal and NHL.com, mostly covering the Minnesota Wild. You can find her on Twitter at Jessi_Pierce. Jessi, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. Glad we could connect.
And, of course, my pal, Bruce LeVine. He's the co-host of the Dallas Stars radio broadcast. You can find him on Twitter at Bruce Levine Puck. Of course, the experts are joining me again. And these two teams are both, in my mind, I'm looking at that's what people do in Canada now. They look at betting odds. It's new guys in Canada, apparently. But the Wild are up there. Oh my God, how did the Wild get up there? And Dallas is still up there too. So, Jessi, how, the turnaround from a year ago before Krill the Thrill, we weren't expecting the Wild to be that mediocre team, but now they're like, what? They're expected to finish second?
That's Kirill Kaprizov for you, right? That's what a superstar can do. And Minnesota doesn't know what to do with the superstar. They haven't had one since maybe Marian Gaborik, and even that Kirill is a completely different level. So, he has certainly taken this Minnesota Wild team to new heights, new expectations. He makes everybody around him better. And it's fascinating to watch him in person. He is as phenomenal as everyone advertised him to be. You only got a shortened version of it last year. Obviously, he won the Calder. He did great, disappeared a little bit in the playoffs. So you're looking to see a little bit more out of him this year. But he's got some young line mates as well to help him out. Joel Eriksson jumping up to that top line center too. So it's going to be an exciting year for Minnesota. Fingers crossed, hopefully.
To follow up with the Krill, he had one good year right? Was there a couple of years? Or why is he like, I can't recall the last time a player entered the league and then bam, a year later and they're making how much money? It's pretty crazy.
It is. I mean, especially in a truncated season too, where that was like 55, 56 games last year for Kirill Kaprizov. But that's how important he is of a player to this Minnesota Wild organization. He's a guy that they want to build around. Remember, Minnesota waited 5 years for him to come over from the KHL just to begin with. So for him to kind of have held out a little bit this offseason was more torture, because people that saw him last year, people that saw what he was capable of, the vision, the hockey smarts that he has are just absolutely tremendous. And the creativity too. Like it's a wow factor. So I think Bill Guerin knew he did not want to let him go. Obviously, both Kirill's camp and GM Bill Guerin's camp came at odds a couple times, but they got it done. $8 million. He's getting paid quite well for a young guy in his second year. You're hoping for no sophomore slump at all, but I don't think you have to worry about that. Now the goal is to keep him here past 5 years once that finally comes to terms, but we've got a little bit of time to wait on that.
Yeah. Bruce, before we started recording, he was like, "Do I look good enough for on Zoom record?" Bruce, I'm showing people my bald head now. Come on.
You have lower expectations than I do, Pete. I mean, it's nothing personal. I mean, you didn't tell me I was going on with Jessi. I thought I was going on with some grizzled old hockey guy who looked like he might smell of rum and cigars. And instead I've got this, but fine. Go ahead. You ambush me. Go ahead.
But I have the messy background. So that like evens me out a little bit, I think.
You know what, Jessi, I'll throw the first dart if you want. Minnesota doesn't know what to do with the superstar. Last really great one you had, you sent to Dallas. With
Don't do it. Don't. You went there. You went
Mike
there.
Modano,
but he's back. He's back where he belongs now, isn't he?
I know, but he did his job here. He did what you can have him back. He did what he needed to do here. But you think about it, Minnesota, a dynamic forward that played in Minnesota, you almost have to go back to Modano for this kind of hype and success for a young player like that.
Oh, absolutely. I would not disagree. Like I said, Gaborik too had his faults. He was hurt all the time when he was here in Minnesota. So he's not well liked. Mike Modano is the adopted son of Minnesota. And yes, we hate Dallas. That's the only reason I wish you would have told me I was on with Bruce. I probably would have declined.
Well, if you want to follow in the footsteps and send Kaprizov down here, we'll take him too.
Never.
And we'll hang his banner up there next to the next Stanley Cup that Dallas wins.
Oh, there you go. How's Jason Robertson doing? Did that work out? It's pretty good.
It worked out okay. He's a little bit dinged up right now, actually. We're not sure. We really don't expect him to play opening night. He got banged up the last home preseason game against Colorado, and he has not practiced this week, and he is not going to be likely to start against the Rangers on Thursday night. So it's a little bit tough, but I keep telling everybody it's an 82 game season. You got to remember down here, it is a bit football country. So if you start talking about missing 2 or 3 games, people immediately freak out. But you got to remember it's an 82 game season. So if Robo has to miss 2 or 3 to be healthy for the next 79, that's fine. That's hockey. Everyone remember, it is a marathon. This is not last year's season when you're only playing the same 7 teams and every game is magnified by 15,000% because it's in the division and it could cost you the playoffs.
Right.
Exactly. When you're talking about intense and everything, that last season for Dallas, oh my God, Bruce, I remember talking to you like it was yesterday with the stress and the tight schedule and then what happened with the stoppage and then they had to catch up. It was difficult for Dallas too. So is this a breath of fresh air with the longer season, at least the more rest? How are the players dealing with going into this season with, the whole COVID problems that were going on last year?
Well, first of all, I don't want anybody from Toronto or Minnesota laughing when I talk about the bad weather down here that really cursed the Dallas season. You've got to remember, this is not an area that has snow plows or salt trucks or as you found out, we're not capable of keeping our electrical grid up when it's minus 10 degrees for more than 2 hours. That's a whole different story. But if you look at what happened to Dallas last year, everything that could possibly go wrong in a truncated season went wrong. First, you had the COVID outbreak right before the season began, and you had to put those games back into the schedule somewhere. Some players, quite frankly, I don't think recovered 100%, got their cardio, got their respiratory system back up. Then we had the winter apocalypse, the storm of the century down here, which sent the state of Texas into a complete shutdown and shut down the Dallas Stars. You come back on the other end, and you're playing 4 games in 6 nights for 11 consecutive weeks, which has never been done before in the NHL, and quite frankly, never should be done again. It was that tough, that physical, that straining on the team. And when you got to the tail end of that, you couldn't even squeeze into practice. The guys were so beat, they were just so physically worn and mentally worn, you couldn't bring in a practice. So how do you correct mistakes? How do you make things better when you can't take a day and get on the ice and work things out? All that being said, if Dallas doesn't lose a team record 14 games in shootouts or overtime, they make the playoffs, and it's a whole different feel. Now, what Dallas is excited about is Tyler Seguin's 100% healthy. Alexander Radulov's 100% healthy. Radek Fox is 100% healthy. And just as important for the Dallas Stars, you are looking at a team that is now rested, ready, and can go. That is the big thing. Our biggest question right now is probably goaltending. Ben Bishop has not recovered. It's been more than a year since his knee injury, knee surgery. Where does that leave him? We quite frankly don't know. It's been a year. He said in training camp that all the operations that can be done on his knee have been done. Now it's a question is, can he play hockey? We don't know. Anton Khudobin sprung on us in training camp last year that he had a major case of COVID and got to the point that for 2 weeks, he couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without getting totally out of breath and bent over and gasping for air. Did that affect his season? I would think it probably did. For the Dallas Stars, Braden Holtby, is he the Braden Holtby of Stanley Cup and Vezina lore, or is he the goalie that we saw in Vancouver last year? So we don't know these things. But for the team to go into the season knowing that you're going to have 82 games, there will be days off, there will be practice days, you're not going to play only in your division, it is going to be a much different feel for the Dallas Stars. And quite frankly, when you look at the offseason moves they made and the players who are not under contract for next year, guys like Klingberg, Radulov, Pavelski, the head coach Rick Bowness' contract is up after this year. This really has a feel, minus the 5 NBA championships, of the last dance. This is the core that Dallas has known for 5 years or so, and this is their year to get it done, or the core is going to have a much different feel and look next year.
You stole all my follow-up questions, Bruce. Come on.
You didn't mention Ryan Suter, though. How do you think he fits into the defensive core? I know you guys signed him for 4 years, I think.
Signed him for 4 years, and that's a perfect case of the future is now for the Dallas Stars.
Right.
That no one cares what he looks like when he's 40. They may not care what he looks like when he's 39. But the question is, can he pair? Though we immediately thought he was going to replace Alexiak on a pairing with Miro Heiskanen. However, it seems that and Suter's even said he likes it better when he's playing with a natural righty, that he can put the puck in the same area as compared to playing with a lefty on the right side. So he's been paired with John Klingberg. They had a couple of rough patches in the preseason, but Ryan Suter looks to be in shape, looks ready, and he seems to be a good fit. You think about it, Joe Pavelski a couple of years ago, another guy from Wisconsin, came down, and it took him a while to get situated. And then when he finally caught his feel with the Dallas Stars, he's been very, very effective. Ryan Suter does not have that luxury. This team cannot go 20, 30 games for Ryan Suter to find his footing with John Klingberg. This is a defense that this team wins with defense. They've got to have Suter ready. He looks good, but, playing in the preseason and then going up against Kaprizov and McKinnon and Patrick Kane is a whole different world.
For Minnesota, again, I'm going to touch base back on the Kaprizov signing. Is that what it takes, though? Is that what it takes to sign a big offensive talent on a more defensive, more two-way team in Minnesota that a lot of superstars with that kind of talent would maybe not want to go there? Is that kind of the contract that you're going to have to maybe a little bit overspend for someone of his skills?
I mean, I think so. And I think Minnesota's really trying to get out of that defensive mindset that Jacques Lemaire so gracefully put into play when they came out as an expansion team back in 2000. They're looking much more offensive. If you watched a little bit last year, they were scoring goals. Like, I have never seen that in my 6 years of covering this team. It was very 2-0 games, 2-1 games. But now they're putting up 6, 5, 4 even a night, which was really exciting. And that's a credit to Kirill Kaprizov, but also some of the other forwards. Kevin Fiala, we can't overlook him. Marcus Foligno, who's never really been a goal scorer, found a little bit of a scoring touch last season on his line. And then there's some young guys that are willing to step in and make it happen. Nico Sturm being one of those players. And even the defenseman, Matt Dumba's always been the very offensive defenseman for this Minnesota Wild team. But Jonas Brodin, his partner, stepped up, did the same thing last year. And Ryan Suter, God bless him, he definitely played more stay-at-home defense a little bit. So seeing Alex Goligoski be a guy that's ready to start the rush and move out of the neutral zone, that's very exciting for Minnesota. So I think that was probably a big message Bill Guerin relayed to Kirill is, hey, man, we can build this team around you. Tell us what you need. We'll give you the tools that you need to do that. And again, I think he took that and said, okay, but we have that same type of thing with Dallas. It's a little bit longer of a window, but it's a smaller window that Minnesota has, especially given contracts and their limit on spending thanks to the Suter and Parise contracts that were bought out this offseason. So yeah, I'm excited. It's a little bit of a turning of a page. There'll be some growing pains for sure, because it's new faces even from last year. This is not the same team that went and took Vegas to 7 in the playoffs. This is a little bit different looking team. You've got completely new defensive schemes a little bit, and it'll be very interesting to see how they all mesh together, because team culture was a big thing stressed by Dean Ebsen and Bill Guerin, and they're going to keep pushing that agenda this year in order to help them reach success, along with the skill of Kirill Kaprizov too.
Speaking about guys switching teams, hey, I hear Ryan Suter's name. I'm hearing Alex Goligoski's name. It's interesting enough, the correlations between the two teams. But when you're mentioning these players in this team, how Minnesota's changing, it seems like the league is becoming a lot more skilled, a lot more faster, a lot more offensive overall. And those are the teams that take you to the playoffs and get you that playoff spot. But then, as we've seen in the last few years, Tampa Bay specifically has had to change their game and adapt to being a more two-way, a bit more physical, a bit more nasty to go deeper into the playoffs. We saw Dallas execute that in the playoffs. We saw Montreal and the New York Islanders show that that's kind of what you need still in the playoffs. So again, Bruce, what matters more? Are we needing to be offensive to be that better team? Or do we still need to be nasty and defensive to win the cup?
Well, first of all, you're talking about a Dallas team whose magic number for the past 3 years has been 3. Remember, Jessi, you're probably too young, and Peter, you're Canadian. But they used to have a thing on the weekend, Schoolhouse Rock.
I remember that. Yeah.
They had
I'm just
song,
a bill sitting on Capitol Hill,
exactly.
right?
They had a math thing that 3 is a magic number. Well, for the Dallas Stars, getting to 3 almost guaranteed a victory every single time out. When you had a couple of years ago, Ben Bishop and Anton Khudobin leading the league in save percentage and second to the Islanders in goals against, 3 was the number. All you need to do was get to 3 and you win. Now, that is a style that a lot of teams just can't and quite honestly don't want to do. You're not going to see the Maple Leafs winning by getting to 3 and then sitting on a lead. It's just not what they do. When you look at Tampa, though, and Tampa won because they were the most talented team in hockey. I mean, they had Savard and their bottom pairing. They traded away for a number 6 defenseman who on most playoff teams would have been a top 4. Look at a guy like Blake Coleman, who was a 3rd or 4th liner on Tampa, and Calgary just backed up the bank to bring him there. Calgary had an embarrassment of riches and depth, which is why they won 2 Stanley Cups. And, oh, yeah, the best goalie on the planet, which doesn't hurt either. So when you talk about this is why a lot of people think that the New York Islanders are the team that if anyone's going to upset Tampa or take the crown away, it might be the Islanders, because the Islanders play that kind of system. Look, I love goal scoring. It's sexy. It's the reason that Leonardo DiCaprio is on the poster for The Wolf of Wall Street, not Jonah Hill. Goals are sexy. People want to see that. But when it comes right down to it, when it comes to the playoffs, you better take care of your own zone. Teams are not winning Stanley Cups, winning the final game 8-7 and 6-4. as much as the 80s were a fun time for hockey, those days are over. So you've got to have a team. I mean, again, I don't want to dump on you, but look what happened to Toronto in the playoffs last year. If you take a team that can't score or can score and then shut down their scoring, then what happens? So yeah, eventually teams that stop the puck from going in the net win Stanley Cups. And that's always the way it's been. Look at the Conn Smythe Trophy winners. How many have been, goaltenders throughout the years? If you keep the puck out of your net, you win Stanley Cups. And that is not changed, and it won't change.
Yeah. J.S. Jaguar won it big time, even though his team lost in that final. So let's
had to measure those pads though.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are some big pads that man wore.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So before we leave, and again, if you go to the website, jablamsports.com, this is season 7, episode 1. A lot of our guests are going to put down their rankings for their division. You can check that out as well. Best breakout player they believe for their teams. Jessi, so are the Wild really, in your opinion, the second best in this division?
I don't know. They let you down so often, right? Like last year, they weren't supposed to be. They exceeded expectations. I don't think that they are the second best, especially if you have a healthy Dallas. I think a healthy Dallas team is a very threatening team, especially because, like Bruce had mentioned, they know that they have that window. They know it's winner or now or don't. So I wouldn't say they're the second best. I think they are in the mix up there. I mean, certainly Arizona, everybody will beat up on Arizona, which is always kind of a fun thing to do. But I would say maybe third or fourth. I wouldn't put Minnesota because, again, I think there's those growing pains. It all depends on how they can all gel together. What Kevin Fiala looks like with Freddie Gaudreau and if he's getting any support system and around him as well. So I wouldn't say top 2, but definitely top 3.
And Bruce, Dallas, how far can they go up now from after last year?
Well, let's put it this way. The team is not going to lose 14 games in overtimes and shootouts this year. So that's going to be a step in the right direction. Again, I'm going to go back. There was a show in the 80s called 30-something. The Dallas Stars are the sequel to that show with the team that they have now. It's all about the 30-somethings on this team. Can Sagan, Radulov, Jamie Benn is going to be closer to 35 than 30 when the season's over. Pavelski, Sekera. You look at the goalies, both Khudobin and Holtby are in their 30s. If the 30-somethings can come together and stay healthy, I agree with Jessi. Dallas, I think, is going to be the second best team in the division in the regular season. I think Colorado, everyone thinks Colorado is going to win the division. I don't see a reason to say why they won't. The one team that we haven't talked about that I find most intriguing in this division is the Chicago Blackhawks. You look at what they added in the offseason. Marc-Andre Fleury is a huge step up in net.
He hasn't. I don't think he's ever missed the playoffs.
Yeah, no, 15 straight seasons he's made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Right. So you throw Chicago. I don't buy that Seth Jones is washed up and not worth $9 million a year. You heard that around. Of course, don't believe everything you see on the internet. Some of it may not be true. I read that on the internet. Abraham Lincoln said it, so I know it's true. Seth Jones, I think, is going to be a monster back on the blue line for Chicago. I think, getting rid of Duncan Keith, setting him away, great player, but you have upgraded greatly from Keith to Seth Jones. Then you get a healthy Jonathan Toews back. How can everybody be overlooking Chicago right now? I would say that this division, minus Arizona, who do you look at and say can't make the playoffs in this division? Who do you look at in this division and go, if the chips fall correctly, they could be top 2. And if things go bad, they could be on the outside looking in. Winnipeg, if they get a good year out of Hellebuck again, who's going to look past them? St. Louis, who knows? If Tarasenko comes in and scores goals again, and, I don't know how happy he is, but if he's happy, can St. Louis do it? Nashville always surprises everyone year in, year out. I look at Nashville last year and go, that's a team that shouldn't have made the playoffs, but they did. So I don't put anything out, but I do believe that Colorado, Minnesota, and Dallas will be in the mix. I think Colorado wins the division, but boy, if things fall together in Chicago, who's to say they can't be the surprise team? Or Winnipeg. This is going to be, at top to bottom, I think this is the best division in hockey, minus Arizona. And it's going to be a great division to watch. It really is, because there is no one in this division except Arizona, that you look at and go, can't not only make the playoffs, but could compete for a long playoff run.
Oh my God, guys, I gotta go. You know what time it is? It's hockey season time. All right. Thank you guys for joining me again. That's Bruce LeVine. Puck is his Twitter handle, Bruce. And of course, at Jessi_Pierce. Jessi, thank you guys for joining me.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure, Pete. And nice to meet you, Jessi.
Nice to meet you too, Bruce.
Have you ever wanted a one-stop weekly shop for expert analysis on every single NHL team? Look no further than jablamsports.com. We've had guests from James Sabalski, Ardo Cal, and yes, even Dennis Bernstein shows up monthly. We are a fun hockey community bringing everyone together. Find us wherever you get your podcast and type in JABLAM Sports. That's Jablam Sports. Our website is, yes, you've called it, jablamsports.com. Go download and subscribe right now. You can also find us on socials at Jablam Sports on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm Peter Wojernov saying, puck you later. And it's time to break down the Central Division, of course, specifically the Avalanche. Joining me to break down this preview with the Avalanche and see who could be maybe a breakout player for them is Adrian Dater. He's an editor and writer covering Colorado Avalanche for many years, currently at Colorado Now. You can reach him on Twitter at @ADater. Welcome to the show, Adrian.
Hey, thanks for having me, bud.
When we go to the Avs, they're well favored to be atop of the Central across the board. The Avs are roughly like a negative 220 on betting odds, which means if they don't win the division, it's a big fail. Adrian, what makes this team equal to or even better than the shortened year last year? It kind of baffles me that they are considered that high.
Yeah, I think I'm a little surprised too. They're so high with the sports books. I mean, they're the favorite to win the Stanley Cup, along with at the sports books. I don't know if they're a better team or not. I think they're going to be a better team in goal than they were last year. Even though they had a Vezina Trophy finalist, I know that sounds weird, but they didn't have very good backup goalie, that's for sure. And I think they'll be better 1-2 punch this year with Darcy Kemper. And when he comes back from injury, Pavel Francouz, he probably will miss the first few games of the season at least. But I don't think they're as good up front, though, as they were. They lost Brandon Saad and Jonas Donskoy to other teams. And I think some serious question marks as to whether the guys they have now will be adequate replacements for them. So pretty hard to say if they're better or not. I do think they're a little bit better defensively with the addition of Eric Johnson back from injury. But, it could be a little harder for them to score goals this year. And that's reason to worry. But, every team's got a little chink in their armor somewhere. So we'll see what Colorado does here to start the season.
You mentioned that you believe their goaltending is better even with Grubauer leaving, and he was we saw him have a stellar season last year, and he goes off to the Kraken, signing a big contract there. What makes you believe that tandem, that new tandem, as well specifically Francouz being the 1 and 2, he's never really shown, especially in those playoff games, that he can be at least a very solid number 2, in my opinion, at least.
Well, he was solid in the regular season a couple of years ago, that's for sure. He had a real good record. He got hurt in the playoffs, though, and I think that affected him a lot. And, he's been hurt ever since. Guy cannot stay healthy since. So that's a worry, of course. But, I'm just going based on what the team is saying when he'll be back. I think he'll be still a good backup. They had Hunter Miska and Jonas Johansson and Devin Dubnyk as backups last year. None of them, even though Johansson's numbers were good, pretty good on the surface, I think he played against a lot of mediocre teams in that stint. And the Avs kind of I think they played as many guys back as they could when he was in the lineup. And I'm not trying to dunk on the kid, but he's still got a lot to prove to me anyway. So I think Darcy Kuemper is, good goalie. He's had a higher save percentage than Philip Grubauer has overall the last 3 years. He's, he had a pretty mediocre team in front of him. He won a gold medal with Canada in the World Championships this summer. And, I think he's going to have a real good year. And I think he's just as good or better than Philip Grubauer. So that's why I think they're a little bit better in net.
You also mentioned you believe the defense is better. They lost Ryan Graves, though. He seemed like a stalwart in the back end to me. Erik Johnson is going to be equal to or better, you believe?
Well, I don't know if I put him as Graves' replacement necessarily. I think you can argue that they have kind of a hybrid of guys who are going to replace Graves. Johnson is there. Veterans Ryan Murray and Jack Johnson have made the club. So I was a big Ryan Graves fan. I was probably his biggest defender in the media here in Denver.
Same here.
So I think it is a loss, but they had to lose someone. It was a tough call. There were some times in this past season where Graves did falter a little bit. So he wasn't as good as he was the year before when he was a plus 40. It's tough. I'm not saying that they're better necessarily, but I do think that, they lost Ryan Graves, but okay, Bo Byram too is also back with the team. And I think when you add him in as well, I mean, he's probably the real replacement for Graves. Mm-hmm. Bo Byram, he's a, lottery pick. So I think they're going to be okay on defense.
Bo Bynum, he looked pretty good when we saw him there in the post-season action there. Do you think he's ready at least to fill in maybe a top 4 role? I think some people are almost penciling him in there.
Yeah, I think he is going to be a top 4 guy. I think the Murray and Johnson are going to be, or Jack Johnson are going to be the bottom 2. That's what they were paired together actually in practice today, those two. So I expect them, Murray and Jack Johnson, to be the number 5, 6. I expect Makar with Gerard, and I expect Erik Johnson with Bo Byram. So I'll take my chances with that top 6. I think it's a pretty good top 6. I know Jack Johnson's got some haters out there. And Ryan Murray, to me, is a little long in the tooth, too. But, as far as 5 and 6 D-men go, I think, you could do a lot worse than those two. They're veteran guys. They'll know how to play pretty well. They're not going to play tons of minutes, probably. And but Byram, he's still just a kid. And I'm sure there's going to be a little rust and adjustment again, getting back into the full swing of things. But he had a pretty good preseason, so so far so good.
What would a landslide division win mean for the Avalanche if they still can't get past maybe the second round in the playoffs?
Well, it obviously won't be good. They've lost in the second round 3 years in a row. So this, like it or not, this is it's going to be a storyline no matter what when the playoffs start. And this is assuming they make the playoffs. It's going to be a storyline, and it's up to them to get rid of that storyline. They have a lot of pressure on them to at least get to a conference final again. Finally, it's been since 2002 since that's happened. I mean, it's 19 years since the Colorado Avalanche were in a conference final. That would have sounded laughable back in the late 90s and mid 90s, but in the early 2000s. But that's the fact. It's a tough league, man. It's I can't sit here and say that the Avalanche should be overwhelming favorites at anything, really, because it's just such a tough league. Mm-hmm. Injuries can happen. All kinds of awful things can happen. And we still don't know if they're a better team or not based on their personnel. So A long time to go before we start worrying about that probably. But when the playoffs do start, and if they're in it, yeah, there's somebody's going to write a story about how they haven't won in the playoffs second round in the last 3 years.
Yeah. If we all look at the negatives and they do not get past that second round, would it potentially mean they're going to have to make some big moves? And if so, who could get moved?
No, I don't think they'd make any big moves with their core guys. I don't think you'd see any of the top line guys leave. I don't think you'd see Cale Makar leave or any Bo Byram, anybody like that. You know, if they don't make the conference finals, you know, coach may lose his job. You know, that's just a fact. This will be his 6th year of Jared Bednar.
Mm-hmm.
Still recuperating from COVID, by the way. I don't think he'll be on the bench Wednesday night. Yeah, I mean, big change as well. You know, there's only so much you can do, really. You know, I'm sure they would move somebody else. You know, if they don't make the conference finals, I expect, you know, this probably isn't Adam Kadri's last year with the team either way. Maybe not. I think he's still a good player, but yeah, I mean, they're going to have to sign Nathan McKinnon starting, you know, basically next season. He can re-sign extension anyway. So probably not going to have a ton of cap room.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what are you going to do? Look around for bargains. You look for occasional free agent. Maybe you make a decent sized trade, but it's hard to just envision them dealing off a core player in some kind of blockbuster move. I mean, don't forget this team is still young, pretty much, and you know, if they don't win it this year, maybe they'll win it next year. I mean, listen, it's not all or nothing every single time in life. And you know, I know they have some pressure on them, but so does 31 other teams. So let's just let it play out.
You mentioned a Nazem Kadri there. They're tight against the cap, especially with the flat cap and because of COVID and everything. They got to sign McKinnon in the future. How much space do they even have to keep Kadri? Is there almost nothing? He's going to maybe possibly want some kind of raise because his contract actually looks pretty good for what he's done in season at least.
Well, I don't think he'll get more than he's making now. I would be surprised. I mean, he's going to be 33 years old next year, or even maybe a little older. I double check, but something like that. Making $4.5 million, you know, maybe he'll get a free agent deal more than that, but I would sort of doubt it at that age. So, you know, I like him. I think he should stay. I know losing the second line centers is not a small thing. So, but you know, we don't even know how he's going to play yet. He had some struggles last year. And then, of course, you know, the suspension again happens in the playoffs, the first round, and you know, arguably cost them that series against Vegas. Not having a second line center. Now that we sort of analyze it even more, that series and what went wrong, I think you know, you can argue that if they had Kadri, their chances of winning that series, I think, go up by at least 50%. So, but yeah, Nazem's in a big year for him, contract year, and so I expect him to be plenty motivated.
Big move in the offseason, of course. Grubauer left, but they re-upped the captain, Gabriel Landeskog. Everybody was like on the verge of like, what's going on? What's going on? How close was it for Gabriel to actually leave the Avalanche, the captain? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that was a saga almost. That, you know, that was something that I was a little worried about toward the end there, that this could blow up. But he's back. Do I think 8 years is a little long for him and at his stage? Yeah, probably. But I also think it would have been a disaster if they'd lost him for nothing. So he had the leverage. He had the numbers on his side too. He's had very good numbers his whole career. And I think he's got 20 goals or more in 8 seasons. That's only 3 short of the franchise record. So people forget that he's had a pretty good career. He just hasn't ring, but I think the Avs had to do it. They probably paid a little more than they wanted to, probably gave him one more year than they wanted to. But in the end, the cost of letting him go for nothing was just too great. And, I think they had to do it. So there you go.
When you look at the division, who do you think is their biggest competition?
Well, that could change. I still think, I still think the St. Louis Blues are probably the toughest. But I haven't seen Winnipeg play much yet. I need to see some teams play but offhand right now, I mean, St. Louis added Brandon Saad, unfortunately, from the Avs. He's on their first line now with Ryan O'Reilly. And, damn, why am I forgetting his name? The guy who got suspended in the playoffs, too.
Oh, yes.
Or for COVID. Who? Yeah. We both know it.
Yeah.
David Perron.
Perron.
There you go.
Yep.
See him getting those brain cells kick in eventually with me. So yeah, they got Bennington still. They got Colton Parayko's seems healthy again. Torrey Krug probably will have a better year than he had last year. He wasn't really very good for that team. So I think they're still the best. I do worry about Dallas still hanging in the weeds. Veteran team. I think Brian Suter is going to be better than people think for that team.
Mm-hmm.
You got Winnipeg has got a lot of talent. Of course, Chicago adds Fleury, so they've got a real goalie now again. It's brutal, man. The only team that should be a layup for anybody is the Arizona Coyotes. Mm-hmm. Thank God they came into the division, right? But I've learned to never say that, write anyone off because it's such a tough game to play and win. But yeah, it looks like Arizona's at least should be at 2 points for the Avs most nights, and so I think they should. I would pick the Avs to win the division, but I wouldn't go like minus 220. I would be more like, I don't know. I'd probably be more like plus 100 or something.
Well, the Avs are highly favored. Some of those teams that you mentioned had peculiar seasons last year with Dallas and St. Louis, and Minnesota came out of nowhere and had a pretty good season. So it will be an interesting division for sure this year. Everybody's going to keep their eyes on it again with the alignment back to normal somewhat. It'll be an interesting year. If anybody out there wants to check out the predictions by the rest of our staff online, go to jblimsports.com. Should be also on this episode page. Season 7, episode 1. Adrian, thank you for joining me.
Okay, no problem.
You can find him on Twitter again at @Dater. In next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the Pacific Division. All right, so we go for some more West Coast action, figuring out how this Pacific Division will look like. But as it turns out, I guess I'm just going to do a whole rivalry thing here. We've got you guys down in here to talk maybe the preview of the division, but I guess some rivalry. jblimsports.com, Season 7, Episode 1, and covering, for my guests, covering the Seattle Kraken and Seattle Sports for the Associated Press is Tim Booth. You can reach him on Twitter @bytimbooth. He writes for the Canucks, Brady Trettenero. You can find him on Twitter @BradyTrent. And of course, an analyst covering the Seattle Kraken, my pal, Nick Gismondi, is back. And gentlemen, it's interesting. Are we going to see a rivalry? I guess when's the first date? October 23rd between the Canucks and the Kraken. Brady, do you think Vancouver fans are kind of happy to maybe have a closer rivalry, I would say, than some of the Canadian teams?
I think so for sure. I think it's going to be great to have it right across the border there. The Canucks have kind of been looking, I think, that rival that's within distance. They've had those playoff rivals, the Bruins, the Blackhawks and such, but it's going to be great to have kind of this regular season rival on a consistent basis.
And Tim, we just saw the new captaincy signing. They gave him the C. That's Mark Giordano, who is already a kind of a rival for the Canucks. Pretty interesting. Named the new captain.
Yeah, no, he was kind of the it was thought that he was going to have that from the moment that they took him in the expansion draft, just because of all of the time he spent in that role with Calgary. So it was kind of it felt like a little bit of a no-brainer decision once they decided to go forward with actually having a captain in the first season. But yeah, that feeds into everything that goes along with sort of this the potential of this rivalry to be between the Canucks and the Kraken. And I think, as hopefully the border becomes easier to cross in the coming months, I think that'll only ramp up the potential for, having Vancouver fans trying to come down and make their way into Climate Pledge Arena for a game, and having Kraken fans trying to make their way up and get into Rogers Arena for a Canucks home game. So I'm looking forward to seeing it develop. I know that for a long time, the Canucks were in some ways trying to get into the Seattle market to see if there was the potential of tapping into the fan base here. And now that the Kraken are here, that just only adds into another layer of the possible depth of the rivalry.
Nick, do you think some of the fans who might be Canucks fans in the area will totally switch, or how are they going to react now?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been kind of trying to gauge that. I've really only spent about 7 days in Seattle. Everything sort of happened at a little bit of an accelerated clip for me, jumping in with these guys. And what I've seen is very passionate fan base in Seattle already. I mean, you get off the plane and it reminds me of when I started with Vegas. I was in Vegas the first 2 seasons, and it was this level of excitement, and you see it everywhere. So I think that if you're in Seattle, it's going to be very difficult to not be a Seattle Kraken fan. I don't know as though many folks north of the border will be jumping ship, but there's an excitement for a new team and a new logo and sort of a fresh beginning. And you're not necessarily being called a bandwagon fan if you're getting on with a ground up team. So I think that there's a lot of potential for this organization to be successful. And I saw it in Vegas, and I was blown away by it. It was my first ever experience, up close and personal with an expansion franchise. And I just was blown away by the fan base there. And I'm getting the same vibes in Seattle. I really am. I mean, they sold season tickets out, I think, in 12 minutes or something like that when they had the ticket drive. So what the Oakview group has built and what Ron Francis and Ricky Olczyk have done is just this level of excitement that is just groundswelled to what I think is going to be really, really something excellent. And I do think that there's a built-in rivalry there. Anytime you're that close to another organization, I think you'll see it. I think it'll take a little while, but I'm also gonna throw out there. I think that there's a sleeper rivalry out there for Seattle as well, and we'll wait and see how that develops. But tonight might tell a tale as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, watch out. Maybe I'll do some hockey dominance action here and pitch to the Quebec people. Hey, if there's a team relocating, watch out. Nick might go there next.
Well, I was worried. I'm worried I'm getting a little bit of a suitcase reputation around the league. So I'd like to stay in Seattle for the foreseeable future, if possible. Like I said, I don't need another box of logo gear. So if anybody wants some Vegas Golden Knights or Chicago Blackhawks logo merch, I've got it going cheap right now. So I'm going to try to hang in tight with Seattle for a while.
All right. Tim, I wanted to touch base back with you with the whole Giordano thing. You said it was a no-brainer, and I think we all did. But at the first sign, when Giordano was selected, he was kind of irked at maybe going there. I guess he's just a tradition. He's the captain of the Flames. Now he's going there. But with the no-brainer, was there even a remote chance or somebody else that could have gotten it?
Maybe Jordan Eberle. He probably would have been the next one to jump to mind. He's going to be an assistant captain. Jaden Schwartz, kind of the same deal. Eberle probably would have been the one if it hadn't been Giordano. But he's got so much experience with what it takes to be in that role, and there's going to be so many different obstacles that they experience in this. I mean, heck, we're talking on the day of the opener, and they're experiencing one with guys in COVID protocol. So, and they're going to be down their top line center tonight, it seems like. So, it sure seems like he's the perfect option for that, because he's been through so many different things with Calgary, successes and failures, and how to deal with that in that role. And so he's the perfect guy to sort of build around and lean on as they kind of establish this leadership group for this first season, and then develop it from there as they get guys who come up through their system and are part of the core group going forward.
Yeah. You mentioned the COVID protocol. They already had Yanni Gourde on the IR. Now the forwards, Jared McCann, Jonas Donskoy, Marcus Johansson, Jamie Alexiak, the big guy on the back end, are all on the list. And of course, they had already had Calle Jarnkrok on the list since last week. Nick, they even went up. A good thing they picked up Barry Boulette for the team. So who's gonna fill in all these roles right now for opening night?
I'm actually catching a flight to Seattle. Ricky Olczyk called me and asked me my jersey size, so I'm gonna take a spot on fourth line left wing, my off wing. So we'll see if I can't maybe do a little something for the boys tonight. But I'm just kidding. But no, I don't know. Listen, not great timing, obviously, for a lot of reasons. But I do think that they're deep. I just think that it's a tough. I mean, listen, it's gonna. I've been saying since this thing started, it's an opportunity to write their own story. Vegas had quite the start to their franchise when they kicked things off for tragic reasons. And what they did was they used it as an opportunity to put themselves together and step up to the plate and go do something special. And I got to imagine that the mentality is that tonight for these guys. We're stepping into the last team that came into this league. It's the loudest building in the NHL. We have a bunch of new guys that have never even, met before in some circumstances, and a lot of guys stepping up to potentially play, in one of their first NHL games. So, you're going to be gripping the stick a little tighter. I think the first period is going to be an interesting testament to what the fortitude of this group is. And I do think that there are guys that can do it. And I think that they do have a strong veteran presence and some leadership there that can kind of get them through something like this. And again, I think that there are some hidden gems on this team. I'm a huge Vince Dunn fan. I really like Hayden Fleury. I think Morgan Geekie is going to be a surprise and could be a Jonathan Marchessault type of maybe hidden gem in there. So there are guys that can step up, no doubt. But I mean, it's going to be a test tonight. The timing is not great, but I like the makeup of this team. I really, truly do. And I like the pull themselves up by the bootstraps mentality that they've sort of had. It's not the misfit mentality that we saw with Vegas. I think guys were irked when they started in Vegas. I don't think these guys are so much irked. I think these guys are, every single game this night, there's another guy that's got something to prove. And I think they're going to feed on that. And tonight's no different.
All right. I'm sorry, Brady. You've been waiting there forever. Let's go to the big signings in Vancouver there. Quinn Hughes signs a 6-year deal, $7.85. The highest cap hit on the team. After the preseason, looks like OEL and Myers are probably going to be a pair. Who's going to be paired up with Quinn?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely going to experiment with it. The thing with Quinn is that he's definitely he takes a lot of offensive risks, and they need somebody. They've been trying to find somebody who can kind of balance that out and let him take those risks, because I know he gets a lot of flack in this market for his defense, and he's trying to improve on that. But it's tough when, you're known for your offense and you've got to kind of, worry about the defense as well. And you don't really have a lot of guys there to kind of support that out. And losing Alex Edler this offseason was obviously really tough. I think he was, great. And Hughes really thrived with Tanev as well, who is now in Calgary. So they're going to experiment a bit. I don't think it's locked in right now. I think, that shutdown pairing is probably going to be OEL and Myers, and they're just going to experiment for Hughes. Losing Travis Hamonic as well, as that recent news came out. That's a tough blow. We're going to see what develops there. And I know it's some personal stuff going on with Hamonic. But I mean, I think they're definitely in some trouble here defensively if they don't get things figured out.
Offensively, they also signed the other superstar, and that's Elias Pettersson. A bridge deal, 7.35. Interesting. Is it seem kind of high for a bridge deal, though?
I mean, it's a bit high, I think, but at the end of the day, they were going to need to find a way to pay him no matter what. And he was obviously, looking for a lot of money, and he was going to hold out until he got it. And I mean, he's worth it when you really look at the numbers and you see what he's been for this team and how important he's been. The question is just his health a little bit, as he's had trouble staying healthy. He's obviously a bit of a smaller guy, so he sometimes gets thrown around a bit, but I think, he's got to bounce back. And I think he knows that, signing this deal is going to be a lot of pressure on it. I think you're right there. It's a bit high, but at the end of the day, I think he's going to end up being worth it.
All right, let's go to prediction time. I know you guys hate it, and we will have on the website prediction lists of where we think we might have teams in order, but we'll go to these two teams specifically. Tim, it's interesting enough, we looked at the odds, and looks like the Kraken are like second considered to finish second in this division. I guess Canadian teams are really bad. But are they really the second best in this division already? Possibly to get that spot after who?
I don't think they're the second best in the division to start off. I think you got to go with Vegas and Edmonton, and then go from there and figure out where Seattle falls in. The one thing Seattle has is they have cap space. And I think as we get into the season, scoring is going to be the issue for this team. But because they have that cap space, they can go out and make a move if they're sort of on that cusp of contending for maybe that second spot in the Pacific, to go out and find a score sometime, before the trade deadline. Mm-hmm. I think they're probably the fourth best team in the division. Me personally, I think they sneak into the playoffs this year, which it would be a huge win. I mean, there's no way you can go in with the idea that they're going to be Vegas part 2. Mm-hmm. But for them to come out, be competitive, be in a playoff race, be in contention for that, I think is huge for helping to develop the market and develop the fan base in the first year. So I think it's Vegas, Edmonton, maybe Calgary or Vancouver in that third, and Seattle maybe all grouped together, 3, 4, 5, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then the California teams that are really in a full rebuild mode. That's how I look at the Pacific going into the first year.
All right. Now we go to my optimistic Nick. I know you have good things to say about the team. Where do you have them, as number 1?
No, I am an optimist. No, I'm not that optimistic. I am firmly putting them in. I am firmly putting them in the playoffs, though. I do think that they have what it takes to sort of get into that last spot. I'm with Tim a little bit, though. I've got Edmonton. I've got Edmonton and Vegas kind of in that 1 and 2. Vegas is, the cream of the crop. They're going to be good this year. Edmonton in that second spot. I like Calgary. I just think that there's a ton of question marks on the back end there for those guys. So and that's sort of where I flip flop those guys. I think it's going to be, Seattle, Calgary in that third spot is kind of how I see it. And then, kind of going off of what Brady said, if they can figure things out on their blue line, then yeah, they're going to be in the mix, but a little shaky at the moment. So I've got it. If I'm picking it right now, I'm saying it's Vegas, it's Edmonton, it's Seattle, and then I would go Then I would go Calgary, Vancouver, and then I think LA is the best of the California teams this year. A little bit of favoritism for my boy Kopitar there, but that's sort of kind of how I would balance it out. And listen, the way that this Seattle team is built, if they get into the playoffs, they're built for the playoffs. It's goaltending, strong defense up the middle. And Tim's right. They are 100% going to grab somebody high-powered offensively. There's going to be a lot of guys available. Ron Francis has got deep roots throughout the league. So does Ricky Olczyk. Both of those guys are highly respected. They will be able to pull a big-name surprise player offensively if they need it. And I wouldn't also be surprised if you see an extension for Gio here as well as a result of that captaincy.
I'll have you guys later on in the season, depending on who they bring in. That'll be interesting. And, of course, everybody's saying Edmonton so far. Damn it, Leaf fans are upset. Zach Hyman's going to get 40 goals next to McDavid or Draisaitl, isn't he? Oh, man. All right, Brady, where do you got the Canucks and the rest of your division so far looking?
I mean, I like what these guys are saying about how the Pacific. I actually happen to agree with them on kind of where they slot in their teams. I think you got to put Vegas at the top just based on what they've done in the Pacific so far since entering the league. Losing Fleury is obviously tough, but Leonard's a capable starter there. They return all their key pieces. But I think Edmonton could definitely push them for that top spot. So I got Edmonton second as well. And any team with McDavid and Draisaitl is going to have sky-high potential. Little concern about the goalies that they're still riding that tandem, but it is what it is when you got that offense. And then, third, I mean, that's tough. Like, I think, kind of what Tim was saying and stuff about how that could really be, Seattle, Calgary, or Vancouver. It's kind of a little crowded. I like Seattle, but I have the same concerns about offense. I really like the blue line. Getting a Vezina finalist goalie is huge. That's going to be, their backbone. So I'll put Seattle in third, and then I do have the Canucks as making the playoffs. I think they just edge out Calgary because I think they're due for a bounce back with that top six. I think if, a rookie like Podkolzin can make an impact and maybe a newcomer like Tucker Poolman on the blue line turns out to be better than expected, or they just get a couple surprises from a few guys, I think that's what it's going to take to get them back into the playoffs. So I'll put the Canucks there at that fourth spot.
All right, you can find the rest of the lists on jablamsports.com. Episode 1 for Season 7. Again, you can find them on Twitter at Nick Gismondi for Nick, at Brady Tret for Brady, and at by Tim Booth for Tim. Experts, thank you for stopping by, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Always a pleasure.
Oh my goodness, that was so much fun. I missed my friends so much. I'm so glad hockey's back. Hockey's back! And wow, next episode, episode 2 of season 7, we're going to have David Alter from the Hockey News drop by, of course, talking Leafs, and all our guests next episode, just like this one, are going to be breaking down their teams as well, breaking down what they think are going to be their predictions for their divisions rankings, as well giving you their breakout player for their team. That's going to be on their website. Even other guests that aren't on these 2 episodes are going to be on the website. Episode 1 and episode 2, check it out. Western Conference was this episode. Eastern Conference is next episode. Wow, again, thank you to all my guests this episode. That was a blast. Oh my goodness, it was so much fun. Check out next episode coming in 2 days. If you've enjoyed anything you've heard in this episode or don't, please tweet at me or even our guests. You can follow me on Twitter at PBojaranov or the entire team at Jablam Sports. You can use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. If you want to also contact us on our website, go to jablamsports.com/contact. Also, you can find all our info for all our guests and our podcasts for even game notes for each episode, including this one. You'll get guests info and links to all the things we mentioned on this show. We even have weekly content articles. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify. And of course, click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this episode with 3 friends you know. Please and thank you. Sublime Sports Hockey is your one-stop weekly shop for every expert analysis on every single team. We are a fun community bringing everyone together. Follow us on Facebook. Thank you, everyone. And to every one of our listeners, we're giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.